Greetings and welcome to week 6. Last week we talked about the security dilemma and how states go about guaranteeing their security in an anarchic international system. This week we are going to change our study from that of security to that of the interplay between politics and the economy in an area of international relations called IPE, or International Political Economy. As always, as with the security dilemma, as with the theoretical lenses through which we looked when we studied every situation that we have dealt with over the course of the semester, realists and liberals see things differently. Hopefully by now you could guess what the realists believe. The realists, when considering international political economy, see the international system, one, as anarchic, two, as a system in which states act alone to further their national interest. And so the international system, from a political and from an economic standpoint, is competitive. And the best that a state can do is to gain as much economic power as possible, to use that power to skew the rules of the system to allow the state, to benefit the state and allow it to gain even more power. So although we're talking about economy and not necessarily security or the use of military force, the rule applies that the strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must in the international system, and this applies to economics as well. Of course, liberals see things differently. Liberals, as with the other aspects which we've studied of international relations this semester, liberals feel that cooperation is the best way to go, and that, to simplify things, a rising tide lifts all boats. So everybody at the same time can gain from cooperation in the international economic system. That is a pretty simplistic view of the two viewpoints, but it's effective in preparing you for the week's study. What liberals look at specifically in two things that we're going to deal with. One is called complex interdependence, and it's the idea that if you interlink economies, then states become so reliant on each other that harm to one state will harm both states in an economic relationship. And therefore, if you intertwine economies through mainly trade, but also financial transactions, then the threat of war between those two states is lessened, because a state realizes that if I attack my partner, my economic partner, if I attack them in a military sense, then it's going to be hurting me as well. So it makes war untenable in many ways. That's the idea of complex interdependence. The second idea is one that's not dissimilar to what led to the creation of the United Nations, and it's the idea that we're going to have disputes, states are going to have disputes in the international system. And so in order to provide them a forum to discuss and to debate these disputes, we need a set of laws that govern the international system as far as trade, as far as monetary and fiscal policy goes, and we need a place for disagreements, to an organization in which states can present their arguments, present their grievances against other states, and have a board or a set of lawmakers make the decisions for them and arbitrate the disagreement between the states. In this specific case, if you're talking about trade, in a case that's on your daily note for today, for Tuesday, is a case between the United States and China. And the United States has a problem with the way that China is dealing with its rare earth metals, and so the United States, instead of threatening or posturing, the United States takes their complaint to an international institution called the World Trade Organization to ask the World Trade Organization to make a ruling on the dispute. So, realists and liberals in international political economy see things very differently. Realists, competitive world. Liberals, a world in which cooperation will be the best way to guarantee growth for everyone. As we look at the international economic system, we look at a change that's taken place over the last 10, 15 years. It used to be that the group of seven, and then when the Soviet Union disintegrated, Russia was brought into this group, and it became the group of eight. Industrialized nations kind of set the tone for the economic policy throughout the world. That's changed in the last couple decades with the rise of China and India and Brazil, and so and a number of other emerging markets around the world. But those three, India, China, Brazil, are the three that really are changing the balance of power in the economic international system. So the group of eight has now morphed into the group of 20, where the 8 industrialized nations that were part of the group of 8, plus 12 more countries that are seen as emerging markets, including, of course, India, China, and Brazil, but also Turkey, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, so Argentina. So, as this power disseminates throughout the international system, it's no longer just the Western world. What does that mean for economic relations in the international system? Is that a positive thing? Is that a negative thing? Finally, we'll take a look at China and the United States, because China and the United States, as the two dominant economic powers in the world, they have the two largest economies in the world, with the United States being number 1, China being number 2, but shortly China is going to pass the United States. Shortly, within a couple decades, China will pass the United States and have the largest economy in the world. So you have these two giants, and from a realist security standpoint, you have the United States that's been kind of on top of the world, and some people argue a hegemon, and now you have China rising. So realists, from a security standpoint, look and say, okay, China's rising, that's going to inevitably lead to conflict, likely lead to war, because that's the way things work. When a rising power challenges a sitting power, conflict ensues. But complex interdependence folks say that's impossible. The economies of the two countries are so intertwined that if the United States attacked China, it would crush the U.S. economy. And so it would be harmful, not only because China would retaliate, but also because of the damage it would do inherently to the U.S. economy. And China feels the same way. So these two giants, as China rises, they have to learn to work together. They have to learn to cooperate. It's not going to be easy. There will be disputes, as we see with the World Trade Organization and the rare earth elements. But the point is that war becomes something that is untenable. And so you will see in a quote, in a video this week, there's a quote from the show West Wing where the character Toby says, "Free trade stops wars." That's what he's talking about. The United States and China's economies are so intertwined, they cannot fight each other. Free trade stops wars. Now, whether you believe that or not is up to you. You need to put your analytical eye to it and make decisions for yourself. Whether it's true, we can only see as time moves on and as China's power and as China's growth continues. So, 3 things. International political economy, as how the realists view it, how the liberals view it. Second thing is the move from the G8 to the G20. That'll be in your situation brief. And then we're going to turn, especially with your journal this week, we're going to turn an eye and look at the relationship between the United States and China. As always, I am free. If you have questions, please come and see me. Send me an email. Thank you once again, and as always, for being a part of the class. Have a good week.